Welcome to another lecture with your professor, Professor Fiske. I am Professor Fiske, and today we're going to talk about file input-output using Python. Okay, so what are files and what is input-output? Okay, so a file, or for a more specific way of looking at this, a document of some kind is basically one of the storage devices that are at our disposal, software-wise, to compartmentalize data in a way that we can pull it back and use it in our system. We normally think of a file like a database, and it's because it's persistent, right? So in our program, we can write persistent or non-persistent data, right? I can say first name, and then Francis. I'm sorry. There we go. And then boom, I have data. I'm gonna make this a little bigger so you guys can see it. And boom, I have data, right? Well, this is not always advantageous. There are certain situations where we would like our data to be persistent. We would like our data to persist after the session has ended, right? So if this session ends and I don't have this data already, or let's say I got the data from the end user, right? Input, and the user gives me the data. After my program finishes, the data is gone. So what do I do in the event where I want to save the data, or I want to use it later, or even I want to read data from another session or even another system altogether? Well, I would use a file, right? Now, this is the first step into getting into databases, and I'm not going to go deep into databases in this course because this is a beginner's Python course. This is not a course where you're going to learn how to manipulate databases in this iteration. But trust and believe that going forward in your Python journey or your computer science journey and programming journey, using a database and modifying and persisting your data in a database is by far the best practice you can implement. Okay, so what and how do we use a file? So I'm using REPL.it, and in REPL I have a file here called test.txt. And what I want to do is I want to take some data and I want to throw it in here. So let's throw in a couple of pieces of information. So we'll say 4. Now remember, this is a file, so it doesn't matter if the data is formed in a certain way. Yes, of course, we would want to form the data a certain way. For instance, I would want to form this data. If I was using a file specifically, I would want to use a delimiter of some kind to separate the data points in the cells for a two-dimensional data set, right? So in this case, if this was two-dimensional, like an Excel spreadsheet is two-dimensional, where you have a column and you have, you have columns and you have rows, right? Or just a piece of paper for that matter is a two-dimensional data set. Most of our data looks two-dimensional. This would be make, model, and then I would separate these like this, and then I would continue in this vein until I reached the end of my data, right? So Ford F-150, Chevy Silverado, Toyota Tundra, what am I missing? Ram 1500, because it's not Dodge anymore, because apparently Dodge doesn't make that vehicle. It's still Dodge. And then I think I'll do Nissan. I want to say Pathfinder, but it's Titan. Cool. These are the big 5. And then we can come back into our program. So what I just did was I added some data to our test.txt file. Now, there's a couple of ways you can read the data out of your file. Now, when you do any type of file operation, whether it's with a database or whether a file itself, we like to use patterns. So now that we're getting into this part of the course where I'm done with the fundamentals and we're finished speaking about things at a very granular level, rudimentary level, now let's talk about some things that matter. We have what's called a repo pattern. Now, what's a repo pattern? Repository pattern allows us to be able to have a singular and consistent way to interact with our persistent data. Now, when you have repo pattern, there are certain methodologies we like to implement, or there are 4 specific paradigms, not methodologies, my apologies. There are 4 specific paradigms which we want to implement in our repo pattern to make sure that it operates like a repository. The first is create, read, update, and delete. Now, And looking at my repository pattern, you can see here that there's a singular acronym that is being created. If you take the first letter of each of these words, it creates the word CRUD. So whenever somebody says repo pattern, the first thing that should come to your mind is CRUD. Create, read, update, delete. Fine. Awesome. We're going to start with read because it's normally the easiest thing to do. We already added data to our test file. So now what I want to do is I want to read it out. Now, one way I can do this is by creating a variable. So I can say db. I like using that variable a lot. db is a shorthand name for database. I like db because it allows me to understand what I'm using and what variable I might be needing. Okay, so db equals open. Open is the function we need to implement and execute to get read or to create, read, update, and delete data out of our text file of in this specific situation. And then I will give it the name of the file. Now, it is advantageous that you put the name or you put this file in the same directory, the same folder as the Python script. If you do not do this, then you will have to go find it. You would have to traverse the directories using this specific links. Please understand that this first parameter in the open function is a file path. It is not just the file name. In this case, all of my files are in the same directory. If I just so happen to separate these out, which we do on a regular basis, and we put these into folders, so I can say data, not dat. That sounds like a rap song. We'll say data, and then I drug this in, right? And it did not refresh the name correctly. Let's try it again. Data, perfect. And then I had another folder, which we do, like I said, we do this all the time. Wow, it's not moving very quickly for me. Another folder, please, thank you. And we say code. I don't want that in the data folder, so I'm gonna drag it out. And then I take my Python script and put it in my, it's probably gonna fail because it needs to be, this main needs to be outside of a folder unless I change the pathing, and I don't want to do that right now. Change the execution path of where my main is. Let me see if I can find that really fast before we continue. REPL, yeah, there it is. So entry point, I can say code main. Is it going to be upset about that? It shouldn't be. Let's find out. For science! Test this out. I've not done this before in Python or in REPL, so I don't know if this is going to blow up, but let's give it a go. What I need to do is in REPL, it is very important that the main file is accessible to REPL. So when I go into the code config files from REPL, you can see that the entry point is main.py, which is that file name. I am changing it to code because that is the directory that I put the main in. And now I'm going to say go there. Let's see if it works or if it blows up. It should throw an error at 6, right? Yeah, it worked. All right, cool. So it threw an error at 6. So yeah, if you're in REPL and you want to change where your main is or what your entry point Python script is, you can do it here in the REPL or in the .REPL it config file. Okay, cool. So that's nice. I have my data configured, or I have my files compartmentalized. I like this. So now I want to read from it. So let's say if I want to read from this, once again, I need to give it that file location and then say test.txt. Now, if I want to read, I want to give it one more parameter. Notice the parameter, the first argument is the file path. Okay, I'm very specific in saying that because if you look at the top there, it says file description or path. That is the first parameter. It's not just the file name. The second parameter is the mode we want to implement, and notice that they have the example of R here. R stands for read. So we'll say R, and then we can read the file. So let's say print, well, I guess read response equals db.read, and then print response. And let's see what happens. I should get that two-dimensional, no such file in directory txt. So let's try it the other way. And if you do backslash, so whack, which is backslash, escapes the character in front of it. As you can see here, it's escaping that T. I don't want that. So whenever you do a file path, you need two whacks. They escape each other, and then you get the right thing. Let's see if this works. It should. It should work now. It should not work. No such file. Oh, it's test. Test. Put it back the way it was. Let's try it again. Mistakes were made. Man, it's like I dreamt this up all on my own. Fantastic. I read the file. I got the contents of the file when I read it, and I printed the response. Now, there's something I want to let you guys know. This is not the best way to handle this specific way to read a file. And the reason why is because if you've noticed, the file did not close. I did not close the file. This is a problem. Because in certain situations, what can happen is that if you don't close the file and the program continues to run and run and run, that stays open and it allows nefarious actors who may or may not gain access to your system the ability to read that file. So what you actually want to do is you want to, after you're finished with the file, you want to say db.close. But if you're like me and you forget and you are forgetful, then the best way to do this, and this is available in most programming languages, is you want to open the file in a specific using or session in the session. It'll look like this. With open, and then we'll say where the file is. It's in the data folder. The file name is test.txt. I want to read from it, and I want the contents of the file. So I'm literally taking these first two lines. I'm taking these first two lines, and I'm saying, or I'm taking this first line, and I'm converting it to this. So I want you to save all that data into my db variable. And now I'll do this, and guess what? When this is finished, when this function ends, because it's a function, then it will close the file for us. So if I ran this again, I should get that two-dimensional data set there, and bada bing, bada boom, there we go. Okay, so this is how we read a file. Well, how do we create or update? So these ones are kind of interesting because create and update are somewhat similar. Because when you create and update, you're essentially writing to the file. So in a lot of situations, you will find that you are given the opportunity to create data and then update it after the fact. Well, we're modifying a file, so there's a good chance we're not going to get the opportunity to create. We will only get the opportunity to what's called write. Okay? So when we write to a file, what we're normally doing is we're doing one of two things. Either we're writing and modifying the content of the file, or we are writing and we're wiping that file and putting a new set of data in the file. And there are different ways of doing this. So, like for instance here, this at line 6 to line 8 is scoped just to read. But if I wanted to change this to read write, I can say R+. And then I don't necessarily need to just read or write. So I can say read, right? And then I can come back inside of this guy. And I'm going to delete all these guys because I just wanted to show you what the repo pattern looked like. But in this case, we'll just say that. So we open the file. We are going to open this particular file, and then we're going to open it with multiple abilities. So we can just read, we can just write, but I don't want to do that. Actually, what I want to do is I want to open it up in a way that reads and writes. And just to give you some context, let me see if I can pull this up. Open, and I want to show you the parameters real quick for Python so you understand where I'm going with this and why I will do what I am about to do. So open, and I want to see, I wonder if W3 Schools can provide me. Yes, it kind of does. It kind of does. We can create the file. We won't go directly into that right now. I just want you guys to know you can create the file on your own. You can create the file using, there it is. This is what I want. You can create the file using this open method by putting X in here. And if the file does not exist, it will create it. But what I want to show you is this. So, tutorials point. This table right here is very powerful. I would save this entire page. This is tutorials point. Once again, there it is. Tutorials or tutorials teacher, Python open method. Okay, great. And I Googled it because I knew what I was looking for. But in the end, this is going to tell you all the things you need to do with that function. I want to pause and say what you're looking at right now is is what's called developer. This is a developer dictionary. This is developer notes. This is telling me what that specific function should be written like, what the parameters are that I'm allowed to add, what it returns, and what modes I can use. So right now we just use R, which is opens a file for reading only. You can open the file and read it in binary format. You can open the file for reading and writing. You can open the file for both reading and writing in binary format. You can open it for writing. I'm not going to read all of these. But there's a couple of things you need to understand. If I open the file for reading only, that is all I can do. If I try to write, so in this case, if I try to write, did I forget how to, wow, what's the keyboard shortcut for going to another tab? I don't think I remember that. But either way, if I wanted to read and write, it would be R+. If I would like to write only, it would be W. If you write to your file, it will blow away everything else that's in the file. If you write to your file, it will blow away everything that's in your file, and it will only write what is in your specific, what's in that specific call, right? When you append, when you want to add something to the file and not overwrite what's in there, you want to append. For those of you taking my Python programming logic course, this is very important because there is a project that you have to do called AutoCountry, if I still have that in there. And what it will ask you to do is to append data to the file. If you write, it will blow it away. It'll blow away everything that's in the file. Let's do this for science. So right now our file has data in it, right? So let's move this to the side here. And if you look at test, yeah, you're not available because I changed the folder name. This is the whatever. So let's just take that and let's say dubs. And this is for science, by the way. So I could be totally wrong. I don't think I am though. And I say write F150. And I said run. What is essentially about to happen is I am about to, and the response has nothing in it. It's just telling me how many characters are in the file. And if I go to test, guess what? There's nothing but forward F150 in there. And the reason why is because when you write to the file, it blows everything in the file away. What I want to actually do, if I want to add data to this file, so I'm gonna pull this data back. I didn't save it anywhere, but I use the same use case every single time. So if I wanted to append to this file, so I'll put that back actually. If I wanted to append to the file, I would say A, right? And then I would say dot, I think it's still dot right if I'm not mistaken. Let me check that real quick. When I append A, I think it's still right. So if I append to the file and then I come back in and I said write, and instead of F4 to F150, this is what I can do here. I'm going to get really cheeky. Get ready, boys, ladies and gentlemen. I'm about to show you something that's going to blow your mind because I am lazy and I don't want to write this over and over again. So we're going to say vehicles equals, we're going to use a dictionary. I'm going to show you a dictionary. We're going to go dictionary mode. Or actually, this is going to be an array of dictionaries. Or a list of dictionaries, because this is what I do in the real world. So, first things first, we'll say year. Yeah. We'll say year. And year is, no. We're just going to do model. So, model. And this equals for, make. I'm not a fan of capital, so I'm just going to say make model is lowercase. We're going to say make model, and then we're going to say Ford is the first one, F150 is the second. Obviously, we need the comma, now another object in the array, make, we'll say Chevy, we'll say model, oops, we'll say Silverado, okay, and then one more for the road. We'll say another object, another dictionary. We'll say make as the key. We'll say Toyota as the value. Model as the key. We'll say Tundra is the value. Okay, great. Well, so we'll just stay with the big, and I know they say Dodge is one of the big three, but I'm a Toyota guy, so I'll say Toyota is probably number one in my book, but that's another conversation. So what do we just do here? We just created a list as we did in the last one. And I know this is waxing long, but I want to show you guys this real quick. So I made a list and I said, hey, I want a list of objects that have keys that matter to me and values that are associated with those keys because I'm very interested in being able to get this data without having to iterate over this in a very non-interesting way. So what are you looking at here? You're looking at a bunch of dictionaries or a bunch of objects which have a key and a value pair. Now, up until this point, we've been doing key-value pairs like crazy. This is the key for the variable, right, response, and this is the value, whatever we're writing. Now, please understand that these are also key-value pairs, but in a much different way, because these key-value pairs are utilizing the power of the object to save data in a more succinct and a more efficient way. Now, how would I get this data out to use? Well, what I can do, and I will say write because I want to overwrite what's there, and then I'll say I would like to say response equals, and I don't even need to say response like this. I can just say db.write because all that's going to come back is how many characters were written, which is nice because it tells you if you've actually written the things that you thought you wrote. Okay, so what do you think I'm going to do next? Yeah, if you said for loop, you're thinking like a true dev. Yeah, I'm doing a for loop because I don't feel like dealing with this in another way. So we're going to say for vehicle in vehicles, and not only a for loop, we're going to do a for each loop because I'm one of those guys who likes to just do it live, do it easy. We're going to do a string interpolated. Now that I'm doing this, I want you on that side, and I want you to go away. So this is longer. Perfect. So we'll do a string interpolation here, and we'll say I want vehicle dot make. I should be able to do that. If that doesn't work, if this doesn't work, I can do it a different way. Vehicle dot make, comma, vehicle dot model. That's how I want it to be saved in the file. And it looks like I can't do dot notation. So I won't. We'll index this with that specific key. So make, and then we will say model. Angry still. Nested strings with an F string cannot have the same quote. You are correct. I need to change that so that that nested string is happy with me. If you do if you do strings inside of the string interpolation uses single quotes for the most part. So it's very important that you use double quotes so that you don't modify or mess with the actual string interpolation. This is a big string, and then I'm saying, hey, I want you to take these variables, and I want you to do something with them. I want you to take this dictionary, and I want you to give me what's in the make, and then I want you to take that dictionary, and I want you to give me what is in the model. I'm going to run this, and then I'm going to delete the file, or I'm going to delete the actual contents of the file, and then I'll show you. We'll debug together. So this is complete, goody, and look at that. They're all there. I don't like the way they're placed in there. So we're going to give it one more thing at the end. We'll say in, and you don't have to do this. Actually, you do not have to say in at the end. You can actually add that to the function. I just don't remember where. Here, new line. Now, of course, you would have to answer all of these as well before you got to new line, but technically what I can do here is I can say none, none, and then new line, kind of like that, and then so no, -1, none. Yeah, okay, one more thing. I need to say the buffering is -1. Now what's wrong? Are these nuns? I wonder if it doesn't like the modes without the... I guess I could just say new line and not do this, which I think would make more sense. So let's do that. And if I did that, new line equals, I would have to say mode equals, right? Mode equals, and then I would have to say, this is file. Yeah, so that's good. Now what? What is the issue? Yep, fixed. So, oh, no, not fixed. New line is not defined. Is that all lowercase? It is all lowercase. So, new line. Now I don't need this. Every time I write to the file, it should give me a new line. So let me run that real quick. And yes, this does all the work, most of the work you would need it to do for you. All right, so it's finished. It didn't work. So we'll just put it back the way it was. Right, mode equals 0. And we'll put new line right here. And then we'll just run it. It's fine. We should be good now. And there you go. They're all on their own lines. So Ford F-150, Chevy Silverado, Toyota Tundra. I didn't put the headers, make and model. That's why they're not present. But if I wanted, so now if I wanted to add something to this specific file, I would not write. Dubs would not be the mode that I use. As a matter of fact, I would use A. And if I wanted to add something, I would delete all of this. I am loath to delete it. I want to keep it, so I'm going to put it in another file. And then I'm going to say adios. And now, model, we're going to append. Let's append that Nissan Titan. Let's append the Nissan Titan entry that we removed. So we can say db, because that's the name of our data. That's the name of our variable that holds the file object, right? And then I can say dot. And then from here, I can say write. Yes, it's still the write function, because the write function allows us to write to the file. We just have to tell it how to write, right? And in this case, the function itself is saying append. So now it's Nissan. We're going to say Titan. And I want to give it that new line because I want it to be on its own line. We're going to run this. Now, famous last words. This should not rewrite the entire file. What it should do is add Nissan Titan to the end of the file, possibly after the line 4. Oh, it added in line 4. Nice. And there you go, Nissan Titan. So these are the three main functions, or these are the three main modes you would use in Python. The A, right? The A is for append. The W is for writing. It will overwrite the entire file, so be careful with W. And then read, which is R. And yes, you can do multiple different types of things depending on what you're attempting to do. So if you have a function that needs to read and or append to a file, then guess what? This is how you would do that. Now, deleting is a little tricky because when you delete from the file, you would need to delete at specific lines and delete specific content. That is a whole other can of worms that I'm not going to go in this class because that would take us well past our 1 hour mark that I really don't want to get close to. Because at that point, we would need to make our data, we would need to construct our data in a more efficient way. The formatting right now is not set up and conducive enough to do that. What I would really do if I was deleting from this file is I would take all this data, I would dump it. So actually, I would do this. I would say R and then whatever the writing is. So I think it's R plus is read and write. And then I would actually, I didn't mean to do that. I would actually say db.read into a file or into a variable like response or something along those lines. Now I have the whole file object. And then I can say, you know what, Chevy Silverados are not selling very well, so let's remove those. So I would actually want to read this into a more structured way. I wonder if I can dump the read into an array or a list. Dump or read contents to list. No, I would have to do it myself. So I would read the file, and then I would have to loop through it, right? I would have to loop through the file and take the contents out myself. Put it into a list, and then loop through that list, filter it, right? Remove Chevy Silverado from the list, put that list back into the CSV format that I have right now, and save that back to the file as a write and rewrite everything in that file. That's how it would have to get done. But I know for a fact that's going to take another 15 minutes, and I'm well past my 5-minute microlecture timeline that I want to keep. So with that being said, I appreciate everything that you guys have done for me by watching these videos and giving me good feedback. Please like and subscribe. This does wonders. It lets me know what you guys are looking for and what you're interested in. Otherwise, as I say in all my videos, good luck, have fun, ciao.